This is CBC Vancouver News.
Vancouver has lots of rain, and you would think that there'd be like a better drainage system. Like, this was kind of unexpected.
A powerful atmospheric river has caused widespread flooding and severe damage and prompted a handful of evacuations. Why some residents say the region needs to be better prepared.
We're not at a stage right now where we can say what worked and what didn't work yesterday.
Also,
the entire mountain was an absolute mess. There were creeks everywhere where creeks did not exist.
a Coquitlam resident remains missing after the storm swept away their home in a rain-fueled mudslide. The efforts to find them continue. And with thousands of ballots still to be counted, voters will be waiting a little while longer to find out who will be BC's next premier. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. We begin on the North Shore, where a handful of properties have now been ordered to evacuate, and a state of local emergency has been declared after an atmospheric river made its way across southern BC this weekend, causing flash flooding and severe damage. Pinky Wong checked in with affected residents in some of the hardest hit areas.
This just part of the aftermath from the downpour Saturday. Louis Hearn is one of many Deep Cove residents impacted by the storm. He says the past couple of days have been stressful.
The main street was washed out and flooded, and we couldn't get home. And we had a waterfall forming in our backyard and a little creek that turned into a river that was very close to jamming and then flooding our whole home.
Some businesses managed to open their doors Sunday.
The mood is a little sad. The business is pretty quiet as well.
Just a day ago, gushing water could be seen running down Garland Avenue. Staff at Cafe also say business owners jump into action, sandbagging as many storefronts as possible.
You would think that there'd be like a better drainage system. Like, this was kind of unexpected.
Not far from Deep Cove, those who live on Throne Road in the heart of Lynn Valley are cleaning up debris and assessing damage to their properties.
They probably had about a foot of gravel that washed in from the road into our place, and then the water pressure busted out the fence.
A decade ago, the district of North Vancouver was inundated by localized flash flooding. James Hootsford is disappointed the district system wasn't better prepared.
It's unbelievable it happened again. They've been working really hard at trying to fix the problem, but they never replaced the culvert up by Kilmer Creek by the French school, and that's where the breaking point once again.
District Councillor Jordan Back said some upgrades were made to culverts in the area, and once buried waterways were opened up.
To try and prepare ourselves for similar events going forward. We're not at a stage right now where we can say what worked and what didn't work yesterday. This is an area where the district has invested millions to make sure that we're prepared for these sorts of events going forward. Climate change is upon us.
At the North Shore Emergency Operations Centre, God Howard says crews are busy cleaning culverts and catch basins as heavy rainfalls continues to hammer the community.
We're hopeful that the rain is not reaching the peak levels that it did yesterday. Preliminary reports were that we had a 100-year event yesterday.
He says engineers are conducting checks to determine ground stability before recovery can begin. Pinky Wong, CBC News, District of North Vancouver.
In a statement, the District of North Vancouver says the local emergency order and tonight's mandatory evacuation on Panorama Drive in Deep Cove comes after inspections today revealed that potential failures of private infrastructure posed immediate risk to public safety. Adding residents of the evacuated properties are eligible to receive emergency support services should they need assistance with temporary relocation. As we heard, the destruction from this weekend's storm is widespread across the North Shore and beyond. As Yvette Brand reports, the downpour also triggered a mudslide in Coquitlam that swept away a home and left one person missing.
An atmospheric river drenching the south coast for 3 days, flooding roads, yards.
It was virtually wall-to-wall water coming down. And we were lucky it happened during the daytime. Last time it happened at night, so we had more water flowing all night and had more problems in our crawl space. This time the water came up very quickly.
Jacob Goodman acted fast to try to keep the Seymour River out of his home.
I woke up and kind of heard rumbling around me, and I kind of heard it before because past years I've heard lots of rocks coming down the creek that goes down the side of our house.
I haven't seen this kind of, damage from floods or flash floods or whatever this clog is, but it's terrible.
Rushing water swelled creeks into rapids, swept away rocks, roads, anything in its path. Coquitlam, an eastern suburb of Vancouver, got an incredible 233 millimeters of rain. It all triggered a mudslide that hit a home. The resident remains missing.
The entire mountain was an absolute mess. There were creeks everywhere where creeks did not exist. We're getting a call on the radio says, we can't cross this. Look at that.
Creeks and roads suddenly turned into raging rivers, leaving 3 hikers stranded. Searchers found them and staged a difficult rescue. The first significant storm of the season dumped record rainfall. Vancouver's airport got more rain in a few days than in the entire month of October. The deluge overwhelmed even storm drain systems that cost millions to upgrade to handle big storms.
Extreme rainfall on the steep mountainous terrain above Coquitlam Reservoir has resulted in drinking water turbidity, some cloudiness.
Flooding was localized, but those affected were left scrambling.
No one at the end of the day wants to have their house get flooded.
Now they're left with a lot of cleanup and questions about whether their homes will be safe next time. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meanwhile, BC's River Forecast Centre has downgraded flood warnings for the Coquitlam River and waterways on southwestern Vancouver Island. Lower level flood watches now cover the southern half of Vancouver Island and the south coast, including the Sunshine Coast, Metro Vancouver, the Sea to Sky region, and the lower Fraser River. The centre says additional rainfall is expected tonight as a second and final pulse of moist air moves from the coast to the interior. And while streams and rivers are not expected to reach the same levels as yesterday, there is a potential for further flooding. All right, let's take a look now at our full forecast. Let's begin with the precipitation map. Here we can see the green moving across the map, a lot less than what we've experienced this past weekend, moving into tonight's forecast rather. -12 in Dease Lake, -9 in Fort St. John, so much cooler temperatures than we're used to seeing. Lots of rain around the province with 5 in Kamloops and Rainy, 8 in Kelowna, and 6 on the island in Tofino. Tomorrow's cast is -5 in Fort St. John with a mix of sun and clouds, 0 in Prince George, a little rainier in areas like Kamloops and Cranbrook with a high of 12 for tomorrow, and on the island a high of 11 in both Tofino and Victoria. That cloud is going to stick around for tomorrow with those scattered showers with a high of 12 for Metro Vancouver. That's going to stay the same for Tuesday, and it looks like that wet weather will dry up a bit more on Wednesday with a high of 10. One day after a nail-biting election night, the BC NDP and the BC Conservatives remain in a dead heat. But as Katie DeRosa reports, nearly 50,000 ballots remain uncounted, and that could mean another week until voters find out the final results.
British Columbians are still waiting to find out who will run the province.
Surprised that we're so divided. I mean, like, households are divided, families are divided, people are really polarized these days, so I'm not surprised.
I'm not sad about there being like a potential minority government, but I am sad that it seems to reflect that there isn't a governing consensus in the province.
Well, I mean, with a close race like this, it was kind of expected. So, minorly frustrating, but, I'm sure it'll be all recounted and whatnot and soon enough.
Neither the NDP nor the Conservatives came out with a decisive win. The NDP are elected or ahead in 46 seats, and the BC Conservatives have 45 seats. A majority requires 47. As the governing party, the NDP under David Eby have the first crack at forming the government, but they need the support from the BC Greens, who came out with 2 seats. Eby didn't do any interviews Sunday, but said in a statement his party did not secure a majority. He pledged to do better to win the trust of British Columbians who voted for change. BC Conservative leader John Rustad hasn't conceded defeat yet, saying he's still hopeful some ridings with a razor-thin margin will flip in his favor.
I'm optimistic that the final story of this election has not been written yet.
As to whether the Conservatives could pitch an alliance with the Greens?
I think there is actually lots of opportunity for us to do some things together because we also have some common ground in the sense that we are not supportive of a lot of things that David Eby is doing.
But that might be a tough sell to the Greens. Their leader, Sonia Furstenau, accused Rustad of ignoring the climate emergency and moving the province back towards a reliance on fossil fuels and even plastic straws. Adam Olsen, who led the Greens campaign but did not run again in his riding, says it's too early to make those calls.
We're going to see how the next few days plays out here. I'm not going to get ahead of ourselves here. There's a final vote that needs to happen.
Furstenau did not win the riding of Victoria Beacon Hill. However, she has not yet said if she'll pass the torch or remain at the helm of the party. The results have major shades of 2017, when then Premier Christy Clark's BC Liberals won 43 seats and the NDP won 41. Despite an agreement between John Horgan's NDP and the Greens under Andrew Weaver to cooperate, Clark held on to power for weeks. However, the BC Liberals' speech from the throne was voted down, and the Lieutenant Governor invited Horgan to form the government.
The similarities are the Greens holding balance of power. The differences are the leader's not in the room.
Like 2017, it could take weeks for the dust to settle. 11 ridings are still too close to call and will likely hinge on mail-in ballots, which could take until October 26th to tally. Any ridings where the margin of victory is 100 votes or less will be subject to an automatic recount, and some candidates are likely to request judicial recounts, so the uncertainty will drag on. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Victoria cab driver is being remembered by family and friends, and those who worked with him after he was killed in a multi-vehicle collision in the city's downtown early yesterday morning.
He was looking to go to meet his parents. He didn't see his parents for more than 6.5 years, around 7 years.
He was a very nice person and very kind-hearted person, very good friend of mine, and especially my brother. He was very close to our family.
It's very difficult, there's a lot of camaraderie between us cab drivers. We go through a lot of the same challenges and experiences. And to lose someone that way and so tragically, there's a great hope that certainly lessons can be learned from this situation.
The victim was identified as 25-year-old Rajinder Singh. Police say Singh was driving a green taxi when the driver of a pickup truck who was fleeing police crashed into him and a bus. The driver of the pickup truck was arrested and taken into custody. BC's Independent Investigations Office is now investigating what may have led up to the crash. A new online tool where people can share their personal stories of connections to different places in Surrey hopes to provide a snapshot of the city's diverse history through interactive maps and memories. Saurabh Sandhu reports.
This rocking chair belongs to the family of Henry Houston Scott, one of the earliest African-American farming families to settle in Cloverdale in 1912. The Scott family farm can now be found on the City of Surrey's newest heritage tool, along with a picture of the chair.
A small sample of undertold stories here in Surrey.
Hardy says the online initiative includes a map where people can pin memories and contribute personal stories that might not be captured in traditional records, and a spotlight map that highlights lesser-known historical sites across the city, like Little Norway, a small fishing community near Brownsville in the early 1900s.
So we've always been talking about what are ways that we can open things up and allow people to share their version of Surrey's history from their own voice. And really that's where this comes from.
The tool also features several stories of first-generation immigrants in Surrey, like Karam Kaur, the first South Asian woman on the list of registered voters in 1953.
It's always been kind of central with the, I guess to use a term, a European white focus, the early settlers, but there is a lot of multicultural history in Surrey.
These are some of the contributions that have been added to the map so far. People are welcome to take a look at the city's map, point out places that have been really important to them, to their friends, their family, their neighborhood, or their community groups, and share what they would like their neighbors to know about them.
She is encouraging residents past and present to contribute to the narrative of Surrey's diverse history for future generations.
It's a work in progress, so it's going to constantly be evolving, but it'd be more interesting to see a lot more stuff added.
The city says there's no limit to the number of entries someone can make, and it's all free of charge. There's also a kiosk set up at the Surrey Archives building for anyone wanting to access the tool in person. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Surrey.
Still ahead with just over 2 weeks left until the U.S. presidential election, the jabs, the rhetoric, and sales pitches are heating up. That story is next. Stay with us. The U.S. presidential campaign made stops in battleground states this weekend. With just over 2 weeks until Election Day, the messages aren't changing, but they're being delivered with even more intensity. The CBC's Karen Pauls reports.
That's great, thank you.
Donald Trump swapped his suit jacket for a McDonald's apron, making fries and serving customers.
This is fun, I could do this all day.
In a photo op designed to tear down his opponent. He's accusing Kamala Harris of lying about working at the fast food chain during her college years, but offering no proof.
Now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala. Okay, she never worked here.
Harris, meanwhile, was celebrating her 60th birthday at a Baptist church as she asked Black Christian voters to support a campaign called Souls to the Polls.
In this moment, our country is at a crossroads, and where we go from here is up to us.
Her appeal to voters' morality in Georgia, a sharp contrast to Trump's vulgarity in Pennsylvania. At a rally in the hometown of Arnold Palmer Saturday, Trump made crude comments about the late golf legend.
He took showers with the other pros. They came out of there, they said, oh my God. That's unbelievable.
And used offensive language to insult Harris.
You're a shit vice president.
Pennsylvania also the site of $1 million giveaway from Trump supporter Elon Musk.
Tonight's person is John Craig.
The check going to a registered voter who signed a petition by his super PAC, part of an effort to get more people to register to vote in the state, drawing concern from Pennsylvania's governor.
I think there are real questions with how he is spending money in this race, how the dark money is flowing, not just into Pennsylvania, but apparently now into the pockets of Pennsylvanians.
Musk is promising another giveaway every day until the election, and that is now just 2 weeks away. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Washington.
This was the sunset this evening from Pacific Sands Resort in Tofino. Coming up, we'll take you to UBC for the annual Apple Festival. Despite the rain, hundreds showed up at UBC today for the annual Apple Festival, an event aimed at educating people about the dozens of varieties grown right here in BC. But as Maurice Katz reports, organizers say climate change is affecting apple crops, putting growing at risk.
More than 100 different apple varieties on display, all grown in BC.
There's a couple of apples we have now that are available around the world that were introduced to the world at the UBC Apple Festival.
Vogt says she founded the festival 33 years ago to educate people about the province's local orchardists.
I mean, we do this festival to educate families about apple diversity. We sell in our apple market over 50 different varieties of apples. And for most people, that's a revelation that there's more than the 6 to 8 apples that you can buy at your local grocery store.
Despite the downpour, there were plenty of smiles, live music, food vendors, and cooking demonstrations. It's the UBC Botanical Garden's biggest fundraiser. But not only that,
but it's also our highest profile event, which then I think opens people's eyes to biodiversity generally. And that's really what we're in the business of doing here, is to try to promote biodiversity.
That biodiversity is what researchers are trying to preserve. He says with climate change, local agriculture is struggling, and how we grow apples has to adapt.
What's going to save us is an understanding of the sort of the broader genetics of food plants. So we have people who are working here in the university, but around the world, in creating crops that are better suited to different kinds of environments. And
all money raised at the festival helps fund research initiatives at the university. He believes one of the best ways to reduce climate change that continues to impact local growers is by better supporting local growers.
Whatever we can do to reduce that carbon that's going into the atmosphere, that's going to be good. And we can by concentrating on local produce.
And ultimately, improving food security in the province. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
Some of the best outrigger canoe paddlers from across Canada were at Jericho Beach this weekend, vying for a chance to compete at the World Championships in Brazil next year. Take a look.
So this is our 2025 national team trials. So today people are going to try to qualify for the International Federation World Distance Championships, which are in Niterói, Brazil next summer. Well, the weather has played quite a big issue leading up to this week. We knew that the wind was going to play a factor, the rain was going to play a factor, so we've had to change our course a few times leading up to today, throughout the week, and even with ferry cancellations yesterday. We have people that have flown in from across the country. We have people that drove across from Calgary and across from Kelowna, so they had to deal with a little bit of snow. So we do our trials now because, you know, winter. And we have to have our team selected by next spring.
Yeah, I paddle all winter in Kona, so it's a little different water, big wide open ocean, lots of waves, lots of downwind runs, yeah. It's better than Hawaii where it's 30 degrees all the time.
It's really good actually. It was, the wind kind of lined up for us nicely and everybody was giving it their best, so I'm happy with mine.
I bet they have some great arm muscles. That is your late news for Sunday, October 20th. Thanks so much for watching. For news at any hour, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/bc. Good night.